Hello and welcome to the S.H.E Gallery show. We are very grateful to be here today. Thank you for joining us. We are here with my two good old friends, co-host Diane Pasola and technical engineer Lucy May.
Hi, I'm Diane Pasola. I'll be helping Dulce and S.H.E Gallery co-host. Today we have a great segment for you. In the next 25 minutes, we're going to be talking about the aging diseases, specifically Alzheimer's, and what an organization is doing to help with this. Go ahead.
Thank you, Diane. Joining us, we will invite La Brocha with Judith Rocha from La Brocha. And please remember that this show is live. You are watching the S.H.E Gallery show live on CAN TV 21 and cantv.org/hotline. Today's discussion is based on healing art for the elderly who suffer from Alzheimer's disease. As I mentioned, I have guest Judith Rocha from La Brocha joining us. Please give us a call at 312-738-1060 at any time to join this conversation. Judith Rocha, thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for inviting me, Dulce.
Thank you. Okay, so I understand that La Brocha is a fairly new community organization that Judith Rocha has brought about this year or this past year in 2016 from her personal experience. Judith is here to share with us her story. Thank you.
Yes, so La Brocha is actually a collective with two other women and myself. The three of us, in some capacity, have become familiar professionally and to a certain extent myself personally with regards to Alzheimer's disease and dementia. On a personal level for myself, my mom was diagnosed 11 years ago, and being the youngest of a single family home, having mom be always, that very hardworking woman, being able to handle not only coming to a new country, working at different settings, and living in different conditions that were not necessarily what she was used to back home. To see her now in these past 11 years deteriorate in the sense that she repeats stories very often, doesn't really remember things short term, so she could probably not tell you what she just had to eat 20 minutes ago, but she will keep mentioning her stories about childhood over and over again. Other things, like daily functioning skills, like being able to go to the bathroom by herself, or doing things like showering or preparing food even, which was kind of a staple in our home, to have mom prepare meals, and to now not be able to have that mom's home cooked meal is definitely something that, you deal with that loss as you see the condition progressing. The future with Alzheimer's is definitely not something that we look forward to, but we're very realistic about the different things that can come. Things like, at one point possibly losing her verbal skills, so not being able to talk. Things like mobility, so not being able to move, and to the point where, even things like eating will become difficult. So those are, just some of the things that we anticipate with this condition. Every person is different, and the way that the disease progresses is very different in every person. But those are some of the staples that occur with that disease.
Thank you, Judith. That's a very interesting point. So she mentions all of these losses at various different points of life. We can imagine, okay, we know that she suffers from Alzheimer's disease. We've all heard of Alzheimer's disease, but this is a person who's living with a person who suffers from this disease. So it's more than a diagnosis. It's a way of living. So both her mother and herself have suffered from a loss. Now, we are all familiar with loss, right? We all, from the age or from the time of birth, we all age, right? And whether we realize it or not, it's something that we continue to do every single second. You and I are aging right now. New hair is growing. This is it. This is time. This is what happens. And at any given time, life can be taken away. And at any given time, we can suffer from loss. And loss does not always mean death. It can be an end to a certain style of living. Many of us go through obstacles in life because it's life and it's hard. But it's learning how to deal with those obstacles that we need to, as a community, come together and try to help each other, to understand that we do understand, because we all go through this. It's not a secret. People don't like to talk about it because it can be embarrassing, or we weren't educated, or we weren't raised to learn how to deal with these issues. So we're extra grateful that somebody like Judith has been brave enough to start this collective with these amazing women and do just that, with nothing but inspiration and hope. That's what S.H.E Gallery is about. So we are so glad to be here with Judith Rocha. Judith, there's something that you mentioned that's been brought up. So La Brocha, can you please tell us what La Brocha stands for and why it's pinpointed to the Latin community? And I also want to continue to remind the callers at home, if you have a loved one who suffers from Alzheimer's, if you have any questions for La Brocha, if you would like to talk to us, call us. You can call us at any time, 312-738-1060. The phone number is right in the bottom of the screen, 312-738-1060.
So with regards to La Brocha, the acronym stands for Latinas and Latinos with Alzheimer's, cuando buscan refugio y optimismo. I had a little senior moment, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, and it's a long name.
It is.
La Brocha. So like it all stands for something.
Right.
LABROCHA.
Cuando buscan refugio y optimismo cuando hacen arte. So basically the inspiration for La Brocha came when I decided to take Mom to an art workshop in Pilsen. Robert Valadez hosts monthly workshops for beginners to do paintings, and 1 month he decided to do one with Maria Felix, which is one of Mom's favorite actresses, and so I thought that would be a nice activity to take her to something different, and I was definitely right about that, because she had an incredible time when we were done with our Maria Felix portraits. She just could not stop saying how honored she felt about having that experience, being able to do something like a painting, creating a painting, basically pretty much on her own, just with a simple stencil on a canvas. And this led me to think that it would be incredible to have something like this to offer to other families that have a loved one with Alzheimer's, particularly in the Latino community, because I feel that those experiences, those opportunities are not necessarily the ones that you see in the neighborhood, especially for older adults. So I wanted to look for opportunities to do that, and luckily we were able to, as the collective, once Yadira Montoya and Dr. Sucia Guiñaga joined me with this idea, we created a proposal for the Chicago Community Trust. They had a funding opportunity, and we were lucky enough to receive one of their prizes. It was a very competitive grant. And so we were able to, with that money, host 2 different workshops. One in the Little Village community at Tepochcali School on 24th in California, and the second at in the Pilsen community at the National Museum of Mexican Art. Both events were well intended. Participants were really incredibly positive, I guess, with the experience, and so they were able to take in this opportunity to have an artist and an art therapist direct the art making.
What is it about the Latino community whose risks are higher than, let's say, an American who suffers from Alzheimer's? What is it about the Latino community that's more threatening, let's say, versus another, heritage?
So statistics show that actually Latinos are 1.5%, have a 1.5% greater chance, greater risk of having Alzheimer's dementia as compared to their white counterparts. A lot of this, it has to do with some of the, health aspects or health outcomes of the Latino community, many times dealing with issues of diabetes and cardiovascular conditions that seem to be associated with with also having Alzheimer's in the later years of life.
Thank you for that, Judith. So you mentioned earlier that you've been living with your mother, who's been living with Alzheimer's for the last 11 years, right? So that's a long time. I guess at what point or what age or what age were you at when you started noticing that your mother was suffering from this, and what age was she at, and how will that affect you or the rest of your offspring, or how do genes play a part in Alzheimer's?
So we actually didn't find out about some of probably the bigger symptoms until she was 69. But now looking back, this could have very well started popping up a couple years even before that. The way we realized this was she was still working at that time. She was working at a meatpacking company. And up to that point, as it is the case with many places where people handle food, there's many regulations that have to be followed. And so she would follow those regulations fine. But there was a time where she was starting to get written up because she wasn't complying with some of those. And one of our cousins happened to mention that to us. Mom hadn't, but the cousin that worked there did. Around that same time, though, along with that, we started noticing that Mom was not necessarily getting paid for all the hours that she worked. She would work full-time and overtime. And so and her checks were pretty consistent up to a certain point. And we started noticing that the reason for that was because she wasn't getting paid for all the hours. And once she went back to investigate that with the company, they mentioned that it was because she had not punched in and punched out consistently every day. And so that was another thing that seemed to be odd because that wasn't an issue before. So when we started to get, these bits of information, we decided to go with Mom to a doctor's appointment and talk to her doctor about these issues. And that's where basically got the ball rolling to get her tested, to have her get screened with different things, have some evaluations done, to do a scan. And, it went through a series of tests. Initially, we had one diagnosis of dementia, and then 6 months later, after more testing, Alzheimer's.
Okay, great. It looks like we have a caller, so we are going to take our caller. Caller, you are live. Caller, you are live.
Yes, hello ladies, how you doing?
Hi, good.
Hi.
Thank you for...
Great. Got a quick question. Either dementia or Alzheimer, we know now there's no definite age that a person could start out with this. But say, for instance, you're not confused, from head to tail. But say, for instance, like a question that someone maybe asks you, you know the answer, but you can't come up with the answer. So do that mean sometimes that could be a sign, or should a person go visit a neurologist or talk to your or talk to your primary or anything like this? Because, see, I know that I've been hearing a lot of things. They got medication at some of these Walgreens and CVS, and it's supposed to be helping people to continue to help you know your memory, have your memories and whatnot. But to me, I think it's always better the safe time to check out with the neurologist or either your primary. But do you think there's a problem with someone being like that? And I'm 67 years old.
So it's definitely important to mention it to your doctor. It's always good to...
Hold it, baby. Let me get out the air first. And thanks for taking the call, but I want to hear your question, your answers. And again, thanks for taking the call.
Thank you for calling in.
Judith?
Okay, so
Thank you for calling. That's a very good question.
definitely very important to talk to your doctor about that, because just as you want to know very early on if something like that is dementia or Alzheimer's, it's also important to know if maybe there's something else going on that could rule out the fact that it's something like dementia or Alzheimer's. So, very important to note that you are paying attention to these things, and so having that conversation with a doctor is the very first thing to do. From that point on, they would know or should know and take this seriously, to run some screens and do some tests to be able to determine if there's anything else going on that may not necessarily be dementia or Alzheimer's, but if it seems like there's other symptoms that seem to be pointing in that direction, then to definitely run the evaluations that are necessary to make that diagnosis.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. So thank you again for being with us, Judy. If there's anything else that you would like to share about your organization to our viewers at home, anything, as this caller mentioned, what things to trigger for you, what were some things to trigger? You noticed some memory loss, or family noticed something obscure with some memory loss, or what other triggers do you think that we should look out for?
Well, definitely changes in behavior.
Okay.
If there's things that you did well before, just like the caller mentioned, there's something there that you feel like you should know the answer to, but it's not coming to you at this time. So, a lot of different symptoms that may be other things. It may be situations of stress. It may be, sometimes even things like infections can cause that disbalance. But it's important to then be able to talk to your doctor and determine what the reason behind that is.
Okay, makes sense. All right, everybody. Happy health. Take care of yourselves. Next up, we have another member from La Brocha who has been with this organization or this collective every step of the way since the beginning. We have Judith Montoya. I'm sorry, Judith. This is Judith Rocha, and with us is Yadira Montoya. 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 Ay, ay, ay. Sorry about that. So thank you so much, Judith, for being with us today. And callers, please remember, if you need any more information about S.H.E Gallery, about La Brocha, if you would like to contact La Brocha directly, please link to sharinghisenergygallery.net. There you can link directly to La Brocha. All right, and please remember that we are live. You are live on CAN TV, channel 21. Call us with any questions at any point throughout the segment. And we are also live, cantv.org/hotline. All right. And thank you for being with us, Yadira. How are you?
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful again for you to be here and for you to put all of your time and energy into La Brocha with these ladies.
When Judith approached me about La Brocha, I had been working with her, and I thought her idea was great, but also in my regular work, I do educational programs for older adults and their families, mostly in Spanish, mostly in the Latino community. And, so often people would come up to me and say, okay, this is helpful. I want to know about Alzheimer's disease, but what can I do at this time? Because my mom, my grandmother, my father has Alzheimer's disease. And so definitely the need for support services and for what we call these social engagement or life-enriching experiences is really needed in our community. Again, for Spanish speakers, and that's the reason why we wanted to focus on Latinos.
Interesting. I saw a segment on Alzheimer's. It was like a 3-hour segment on Alzheimer's. And what S.H.E Gallery did was we went out actually to the first 2 workshops that La Brocha had. So personally got to experience what their organization was doing, which is just, I can't tell you how fulfilling it is. So fulfilling to see these elderlies who, you go to these workshops or you hear about these art workshops, but they're mostly for the youth, for the teens, for everybody else, but the elderly. The elderly are always forgotten. So it's really cool that you guys stepped up to do this. One thing that I noticed in this segment that was all about Alzheimer's was that they talked about all of these methods of like help, and they mentioned music maybe, but never did they touch on art. And I think it's fascinating. You are the first collective that I know of, that I've heard of, in Chicago anyway, that's actually using art towards healing. Can you tell us a little bit more about the teaching artist and the art therapist that you're working with for these art workshops? What kind of art are they working on? Do they get to pick their art? Or talk to us a little bit more about the art therapy, please.
Sure, sure. And I first want to say that art is being used in the city with other programs. But again, what Judith, Dr. Susie, and I wanted to focus on was bringing it to Latinos in traditionally under-resourced communities. So that's kind of the gap that there may be art and dance therapy, but it might not be available in our communities. The reason we chose art was, well, obviously the inspiration with Judith and her mom, but also art, there's been a few studies that show that art is really helpful for the individual. One of them, very simple, it gets them out of their routine, they get to do something new. It also builds confidence. They're doing something, if you think back about what Judith shared, like losing a lot of abilities, a lot of memories. This is something that you could do in the moment that you're receiving instruction, and there's no really right or wrong way to paint. And so that's also really unique about art. And then the third one is that we really wanted to focus on the person with Alzheimer's disease as well as the caregiver or their family member. And so it was a benefit for both of them, for the person who had Alzheimer's disease, but also for the caregiver who's often stressed, who has to figure out, food, medication, doctor's appointments. This was a time for them to enjoy and simply have fun together. So a little bit more about the workshop. Our oldest participant was 96 years old.
Wow.
And our youngest was 9.
That's so
So it was
beautiful.
a 9-year-old company
9
for
to 90.
grandmother.
You guys hear this? It's freaking awesome.
So those were the age ranges. Many people had not done art before. And so when we were talking about painting, Judy had a joke that, people are like, you guys are painting houses? What are you doing? Because it was just something that's not readily available. And you're so right. Both in Pilsen and Little Village, there's a lot of art workshops and a lot of art programs, but they're geared for youth, and that's very well, but we wanted to really bring that component of older adults and get them to do something. One of the stories that I can share is that there was a couple who came with their daughter, and their adult daughter, when she left, she told me, my dad didn't want to come. He was like, I'm not going to waste my time going to this art workshop that you signed me up. But as he was leaving, he came, I guess he decided to come for the daughter. He was beaming. He was so happy about that experience. So we got that a lot, where people were kind of resistant, like, why am I going to do this? But then at the end, that was really helpful. The other story I'd like to share was of a daughter who came with her father. It was 2 sisters, and one of the sisters I know very well, and she said, my father knows about the disease, but the sister is not so much. And so it wasn't until the art workshop where the second sister was like, oh, dad is really declining. He doesn't know the color blue from the color orange. So it was also a moment where they realized that, it was like an aha moment. Wow. And so the person that I know very well said, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, because we did enjoy it, but the other time it really drove the point to my sister that our father is really losing their abilities. This disease is very real.
It's real. Yeah. Bringing that forward, that's great.
So I think I answered all your questions.
Yeah, no, and you shared with the audience. Audience, we still have a couple of minutes. We are wrapping up, actually. 312-738-1060. I just want to, of course, thank you and thank La Brocha and our co-host and technical engineer, Lucy May, Diane Pasola, Judith Rocha, and Yadira Montoya. Thank you. I knew you were going to correct me because I knew I was going to say it wrong. People get my name wrong all the time, so I apologize. But I also want to let you know to please, please, please check out the website, S.H.E Gallery, sharing his energy gallery.net, and follow us, because shortly we will have the live video from these workshops ready that S.H.E Gallery is producing, and will also be aired through CAN TV. So make sure you follow us. It's going to be coming out like probably the end of this week. We're almost done. So we're very, very excited. You could see hands-on exactly what La Brocha is doing, the smiles on these elderly people's faces, seeing them paint with their daughters, seeing their excitements when they get raffle tickets and they get food. Thank you so much for being with us. Good night.